Okay, I have waited long enough, and I don't want to wait any longer, to do a video overview of the boards that came with this Data General Nova. And so I'm going to do that right now. Just as an overview for us to go through, there are 5 boards, 2 CPU boards, 2 core memory boards, and a Comm I/O board, I think. Yep, Comm Basic I/O. Exactly, and we'll go through those in maybe not quite that order. And then I have a bonus board that did not come with this system, but is also a memory board. So let's do some comparisons. So, this is the first time getting this Data General Nova a week or so ago was the first time for me not only to see the chassis in person, but also to see most of the boards, because prior to that I'd only seen a core memory board in person, because I bought one on eBay for about $100 earlier this year, some months ago. Okay, so this right here is CPU board 1. Now I'm going to do a little mixture here of wide-angle lens and not so wide-angle lens, and so forgive me for going back and forth. I hope that it's not going to be too annoying, but I think it's going to be easier than me raising and lowering the board as much. So here it is. This is the CPU 1. We have that marking over here. I'm going to get close on that in a minute, but here is the unveiling. Now this, I understand, is supposed to be held in place with screws. It's just sitting there, and this is also one of the first times for me to see these covers, to really understand what they are. So here we go, and here it is. It's almost like the unveiling of the CPU board 1. Now I have this light over here, and I'm not sure if it adds value or adds glare. We'll try using it and see if I can figure that out. But anyway, from this point, now that we see that thing as a whole with the wide-angle lens, for the most part, I'm going to remove the wide-angle lens. There we go. So now all the wide-angle distortion is gone, and we'll zoom in on some various important components of this. So we'll start with the lettering. All right, copyright 72 by Data General, all rights reserved, DCG Nova 800 820 CPU 1. So there we go. This board, even though the chassis I have is marked 1200, and I liked that one because it was blue, these boards are marked 800 or 820. So that's very, very cool. And let's have a look over here. I believe this is the Data General part number right here. There we go. Just because I can see it doesn't mean the camera can see it. There we go. There we go. Seems like appropriate music for the unveiling of the vintage computer. What else is interesting on this board? Well, besides rows and rows of chips and the fact that all of the lands on the board are not computer but hand-drawn. All right, this is a different process that I don't know much about but want to learn a fair amount about how these boards were made before, they looked like they do now, and then looked like they did, by the late 70s. They looked very different. They were all square and such. These are, these are curved. These have curves in them, arcs and things that you just don't see on other boards. Anyway, so I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking at here. It looks like this is an oscillator. Now, I'm told that these processors require the 60-cycle clock pulse of plus or minus 30 volts. That's something I've been going through as I've been trying to engineer the power supply for this. So, I guess there's also crystals on here, and so this one says 20.000 megahertz. You see that? Gotta get the light right there. There it is, 20.000 megahertz. And so, hopefully, with the lighting, at least throughout here, we can be able to read most of the chips and get a general idea of their overall layout in some closer up photography. Because I've never really seen good high quality images of these. Only grainy ones, taken with low resolution cameras or that were reduced in resolution later. So to me, hopefully you guys are enjoying the fact that this is maybe at first you're able to see this close up. If you don't have them yourself, these chips, you could actually see the numbers on them. And that's kind of the reason I'm going through this like this, so I could actually see the numbers on them. Forgive me for, maybe putting this on YouTube instead of taking 20 or 50 pictures per each board and posting that on a page. I may still do that, but this is just so much easier. And as we listen to the psychedelic music, the chips are floating through the air. Okay, all right. Enough of that. Enough of that. Here we go. All right. I don't know if there's anything else noteworthy on this board as a whole, except it's all new. I guess there is. This is supposed to be the board backbone. I don't know what you call this thing, but it's basically, I guess, what keeps it from dipping, because the slots on the side and the rack hold it in the chassis, and then of course the card to edge connector holds that in place. But the area that's not supported is going to be this. This is open on the side, and so I guess that back that brace thing keeps this from sagging, and it's missing. I'm not sure how crucial that is, but I did notice that on this one there's a pin in the bottom that keeps it from sitting quite right. So let's flip this over and have a look at that. I want to point out this plastic screw right here. This is a plastic screw. So here's the back side, and this has this little stand-off thing right there. A little stand-off thing. But this is a piece of art. This board is a piece of art, front and back, which is why I think it should be featured. At least in better pictures than it is right now on the internet. And I know that there are many scenarios where these things are put in shadow boxes and hung on people's walls and never made to live again. And that's good. I'm glad they're being preserved instead of being recycled, God forbid at this point, because these things are classics. But, I like both. I like to feature it, and I like to see it work. So that's why I do have some computers that hang on my wall as if they're shadow boxes, but actually will run right there on my wall. I should show those someday. That should be fun. Mighty frame on the drawer comes to mind. Anyway, we're still focused on the Data General Nova, so here's that fantastic vintage label, cloth label with the pen writing on it. And there we go. There we go. These things look like they're in fantastic condition. I was kind of amazed when I saw these in person how dainty they look. I always thought that these things were beefier, because I know that they're, what was used to push the board in and pull it out. That's this lever. I was always surprised how dainty that is, and always thought that with as thin as these boards are, because they're thinner than your average circuit board, that these things would rip out. As a matter of fact, we're going to see an example of one that did. So evidently that is a real concern. So there we go. Back over to the front side, Data General CPU 1. Before this cover showed up, I did wonder what these things were right here. This peg with the extra board on top. It's kind of a disc. It looks. How does that look? Yeah, and I think that's a standoff for the cover that came with this thing. Except the cover's just not attached. The screws must be missing. And I guess there's a standoff here for that as well, and it's missing. But it did come with a cover. And here is that cover. Oh wait, here's the standoff right here. Now I see. And that's got a disc on it that's only like a half moon. And so I guess that fits like this, just like that. And over on this side, that fits there just like that. And if the screws were in place, then this would all be nicely covered, ready to go in the slot. There we go. All right. Well, with this, I think we should move on to the second board. That only makes sense, right? And of course, what's going to be the most logical thing? Well, that's CPU board 1. Let's have a look at CPU board number 2. Now the question is, can I find it? Yes, I can. Here it is, right here. All right, here we have it. CPU board number 2. We'll take the cover off in a second. This one has this backplane protector, or, backbone, I'm not sure what you call it. And it does have a label on it, too. And so that label definitely has or had some writing on it, although it's kind of difficult to read. It's faded off. But it's there nonetheless. Now, this cover, I want to be very delicate about this. There's no screws up here, so I guess that means this should pop right off, maybe? I'm not sure. Or, if that means I should actually be taking the screws out on the bottom. And so maybe I should just do that instead. Take the screws out on the bottom so that we don't compromise anything here, because maybe those are fit the way they're supposed to be. And so I'm just going to do that right here. Flat slotted screws, like the old days. Such an unusual thing to see these days. Flat slotted screws. Oh, I have to put this in a very important place so I don't lose it. So I have a little cap off to the side. Yep, that one just came off right there. Flat slotted screws. A thing of beauty. That's it, real simple. All right, I'll set that aside, widen out here, and let's flip this over very gently and see if we just lift this cover right off. And sure enough, cover lifts right off. Let's real quick at the bottom of the cover. See that disc there, and then this half disc there. That certainly answers what these things are, because the first board I ever got didn't have the cover, and it just had this half disc in the front, and I just didn't understand it. But now I do. Now I do. All right, let's set that cover aside. And here we go. It's CPU number 2. CPU number 2. Very beautiful. The chips are bigger on this, I notice. It still says 1972, and it still says 800 and 820 CPU 2, so, clearly these are a match set. I didn't pay attention to these markings on the other one, but maybe when I review the video, I'll see if they're the same. All right, I've always been fascinated with this. Uh-oh, this one's coming off just a little bit there, as we can see. And it looks like these were... What are these things? Are they pegs? Yeah, they're pegs. That just kind of fit in place. So I guess they're pressure fit, and 2 of the pegs have broken off here. So that's no fun. Oh, yes. But still, a fantastic piece. And it shall work again. So here's our number right here. There it is, 107-00194-01. We have that number there. I'm going to jump back over to the main board identifier right here. And now we'll widen out just a little bit. Actually, let's widen out all the way. Let's just have a look at this thing as a whole. I'm going to put the wide angle lens on. There we go. Now we can see the whole thing. A little bit of distortion, a little bit of glare. Adjust the lighting there for the glare. Now we have glare in other places. But just wanted you to see that thing as a whole, with a little bit of the fisheye distortion. Okay. So with this one, the chips are bigger. I really don't know how to identify these chips because it's not like they're made by anyone other than Data General. They have their logo, it seems, on pretty much all of these. Although the F, you know, maybe that's a Fairchild chip. But let's just you know, zoom in a bit and look at the chips on here as we fly through the air with the psychedelic music. And I'll see if I can get the glare off of each of these. I'll zoom out a little bit more. Again, it's just this beautiful piece of art. See these curved lines here, the curved, you know, lands on the board? I just think those are so, you know, and they're also wider than I'm used to, and it's just a two-layer board. They just look so much more attractive and aesthetic than, you know, the way computer boards were printed, manufactured just a few years after this and forevermore. They're a work of art too, but in a different way. In an absolute different way. The walls in my lab are filled with them. And they all work. Most of them, as far as I know. Now, is that a crystal? Or is that a capacitor? I think it's a capacitor. Yeah. 6.8. That's a microfarad, I think, capacitor. Yeah, volts DC. Definitely a capacitor. Like the many on the outer periphery here. There we go. I think that really is a thing of beauty. So it would be really curious to see what some of these larger chips do versus the smaller ones. I don't know if anybody has, or if I could find on BitSavers, actual schematics of these processors. I have them on my site, but they're copies of copies. Once they got into the Nixdorf, you know, they were copied by DCC, Digital Computer Controls, and then, you know, recopied for the Nixdorf 620 system after Nixdorf bought it from Entrex, and they made the 480 system, Nixdorf 620. Got all that over at entrex480.com. That's ENTREX480.com. Let's zoom out here a little bit and look at the back. Here we go. Again, I just think it's a beautiful work of art. Just how all of that flows together like that. And there's this double-side sticky tape. It is definitely very hardened. I won't bother doing anything like chipping it off or anything like that. I just don't see the purpose or the point. Don't see the point at all. There's our label. Made in the USA. Don't see much of that. You know, and something else I'm finding interesting is the marking on this board here, YL or something. The logo is really very interesting. It's clearly, you know, in the layer of the board. I think this is where you can see it the best. Let me get a nice shot of that. It's a very interesting logo. I think I probably have it inverted. Not sure what it is. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments what that manufacturer is. I never noticed it before, so I haven't never looked it up. Well, anyway, there we go. CPU board 2. CPU board 2. All right. So let's set this up. And I'm going to put this cover back on now that we've done this. And this one actually had the screws. So I'm going to put the screws in position. No screws at the top, but screws on the bottom. And maybe there aren't supposed to be screws on the top. Maybe that's just how it's supposed to be glued to those posts like that. Maybe that's just how it's supposed to be, just like that. So fascinating. All right, anyway. See if I can get those aligned. Put those screws back in. Thank you for your patience as you watch me do this. All right. There we go. Okay. Another thing of beauty that will become functional, hopefully in the not so distant future. All right. Now, while I did this, while I was going through that second board, I made a decision. And here was the decision. I think the RAM boards, the core memory boards, deserve a video of their own. And so I'm just going to jump right over to the only board that I have that is not core memory now. And that is this thing of beauty. Now, one of the things I immediately notice is it certainly resembles a more modern board because things are more square. What is this board? Well, it's the Comm Basic I/O. Yes, exactly. And one of the first things we might notice is it's had a little bit of a rougher life. These levers on both ends have been broken off, and there's no back brace or whatever we call this thing. It's totally missing. And it's also newer by just a few years, right? Instead of it being copyright 72, this one is copyright 1975. I guess that's written both ways, right? One so that you could see it from the outside, and this way so you could see it from the, I guess, is this right side up? I guess it depends on your perspective. But anyway, copyright 1975 by Data General. All rights are reserved. Of course they are. Of course they are. So here we go. It's the I/O board. I don't find it nearly as beautiful, but of course, without this, all you have is blinking lights on the front, right? You're not. This is how we connect to a terminal. So this has fewer chips, which is good because it's simpler. And I wonder what it would take to make a replica of one of these, right? A modern, or even, you know, using some equivalent circuitry. What is this? There, right there. I just felt drawn to that crystal oscillator right there to see what the value is. And there we go. That's the value. What is it? 10. It's 10 megahertz. 10.000. Okay. All right. Now, let's have a look at this. Another thing I noticed is that we don't have connectors for everything. I'm certain that's because they're not necessary. We can see that there. But let's go through and let's just have a look at the chips. Now, I'm definitely getting some glare on this light, so I'm going to try to turn off this light and see if that makes this any better. And let's just have a look at it. Also notice this is more of a modern green color, right? The color is different, so it's almost like the whole process is different. It's pretty clear to me that the manufacturing process changed drastically between these two boards. So there you go. Let's have a look. Let us have a look. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure that we can still read all of the chips and that I'm close enough there so we can get a good look in case anyone wants to identify any one particular chip. That's why I'm doing this. So I'm taking the extra time because I may want to look at this video and identify some particular chips as I do my research on this. Research, analysis, and learning. All right. Also, it's harder to follow the rows here because there's chips missing. I suppose they're not missing. They're probably all that are supposed to be here, but being it's 2 years newer, a lot less is required, and it's just an I/O board, so I guess that means it's simpler. I wonder how many chips. If I were to make a replica of this board, I wonder how many chips that would look like. Does anyone know where I can find a schematic of this? And, you know, because maybe that's one of the first things I'll do when I start making replica boards, just to see if I can do it. Because I don't know if there's a lot out there. Replica boards for the Data General Nova is not a thing I've seen yet. Emulating it, of course, yes. SimH has a fantastic emulator for that. And that's something that I've played with over the years. Don't have any videos of that. Maybe I'll create one of those just for fun. Don't know if anyone else has put one of those on YouTube either. Emulating the Data General Nova with SimH. It's really very simple. Something about this push button, this dip switch here, it's push buttons. It is. It's push buttons. So I'm actually gonna change one here just to look at it, but I want to change it back because I don't want to change any default settings. But we'll change one and then we'll change it back. So there it is. I've just changed it, and now I've changed it back. That's kind of. I've never seen one like that before, so that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. All right, did I get all the chips here so that we can get a good read on every one of them? I hope we did. Just do another pass here without taking too much more time. All right, I'm almost at the video's end because I think I get about 30 minutes per video here the way I do this. So I'm going to flip this over. Aha! And we see there also, not all of them are used. Not quite as aesthetic. Things are definitely more angular and parallel and closer together. But we do have this label, which I've seen on a lot of Data General items, the pictures of them anyway, because I haven't seen a lot of them, but I guess this is their newer way of labeling things. So someone probably can tell me, like from these numbers, exactly what they all mean. It certainly looks like it's the serial number or the vehicle identification number, if you will, of this particular board. And there you go. Alrighty. Well, we are going to move on here before I run out of time, if I haven't already. And we are going to start another video here in a second for the core memory for the RAM boards that I have. All right, on to the next.